I'm joined by the General Secretary of the National Trade Union Center, Mr. Michael Annisette, as there is concerns over people being able to actually join unions. And of course, the strength and the power of unions come from the numbers. I'm welcome Mr. Annisette via Zoom this morning. Hello, sir.
Pleasant morning to you, and thanks for the invitation, and pleasant morning to the listening public. Blessings always.
Well, thank you for joining us, sir.
Yeah, my pleasure.
So a letter was delivered last week Friday to the Attorney General highlighting the issues of laws that really make it difficult for workers to join unions. Could you just elaborate on the context of that letter?
Okay, well, basically, you would have seen coming out of a judgment, which is CV 2017-00227 between the RBC Financial Caribbean Limited, the Recognition and Certification Board, and the Bank Insurance and General Workers Union. And in that judgment, the court would have overthrown and overruled the Recognition Board, thereby making null and void the over 2,000 workers who would have taken the opportunity and the fundamental rights to join that union. And while it is a legal issue, and it was rooted in all kinds of legality, we in the trade union movement believe that the right to join a trade union, which is a fundamental right, which is governed by the ILO Convention 98 for purposes of collective bargaining and to organize workers, should not be rooted and mired in all these legalities. It should be a simple process which speaks to, just ensuring that the workers, by way of a pool, all right, secret ballot, all right, that they determine their right to be in a union. And the process that we have in the industry, under the Recognition and Certification Act, not an act, the provision of the Industrial Relations Act, Section 33, we believe is cumbersome, and in a 21st century, we need to review it to make that right really a social right and a fundamental right of workers to join a union.
You've actually said that since 2017, the unions met with then Labour Minister Jennifer Baptiste-Primus over proposals to amend the Industrial Relations Act. Since then, have any of the proposals actually been put forward? Has there been any progress with the discussions with the current administration, the current Minister of Labour?
No, well, that is one of the sad things about the process in Trinidad and Tobago. And this, because there's a IRAC committee that is set up under the Industrial Relations Act to review the Industrial Relations Act and to make recommendations. And the committee is across broad section of our members from the private sector, from the trade unions, the ministry, and they have been making recommendations. The union, through NTAC too, the former NTAC, have been making representations. And what we could safely say, without any fear or contradiction, is that not one labor legislation has been placed in Parliament by this government.
Now, you've also suggested that because of the laws which need to be amended, 20% of the national workforce, they're not unionized. Is it really because of the laws, or is there a possibility that they just do not want to be a part of a union?
And it's a cross section of things. The new world of work, all right, and I'm talking about specifically contract labor, outsourcing of labor, and these mechanisms that is used by the employers and the government to undermine the trade union movement would have contributed to what we are seeing. But the phenomena of the percentum of workers within the trade union is not unique to Trinidad and Tobago. That's a regional and a global phenomenon because the world of work has changed considerably. But I wish to add also that during the pandemic period, we would have seen an uptick of workers coming to join the union for representation. And we have observed too in the United States that Amazon and Starbucks would have gotten recognition for workers, something that you would not have envisioned about 20 years ago, 15 years ago. So the point that I'm making, that while there is some legal stumbling blocks, workers are now gravitating towards the trade union movement. And that happens when you have an economic situation, a social situation, a financial situation that we are witnessing in Trinidad and Tobago and globally. And when the workplace is not safe, when you don't have decent work, you don't have decent wages, when there is a level of exploitation, that will force workers to come and join the union. And we are witnessing that as I speak to you. So then it is not what you are saying, it's a combination of things, because if you are a contracted worker for a year, you are not going to join a union. And I will say why. Even though if you want to join a union, because of the bureaucracy of the very act and the nature of getting recognition, sometimes recognition takes as much as 3, 4, 5, 6 years to get recognized for the purposes of collective bargaining, and I want to make that point. When you join a union and you have 51%, you can negotiate for and on behalf of workers. You must have 50% and more. If you have 49% of the workers, and even though those workers, which is 49% of the labor force, says they want a union, the union cannot negotiate on their behalf. So then you will have to get that 1%. And I'm saying that against the backdrop that in our general elections, and we have seen it happen, that if you have 28% of the voters going and vote a government, the government is still put in place. And then we are saying within the trade union movement that the right to join a trade union is a fundamental right. And you must not put obstacles through the bureaucracy and through the legislation to make it almost impossible for trade unions to make representation on behalf of those workers through the recognition board. And then that is what we are saying.
Mr. Annisette, let me just ask you, from your point of view, from your opinion, from the seat that you sit in, what is the importance of trade unions to the economy of Trinidad and Tobago?
What is?
The importance of trade unions with respect to the economy of Trinidad and Tobago.
All right, let me, I will answer you that. You are working today and you are getting vacation leave, sick leave. That didn't come just so. That was because of the advocacy of the trade union movement. You must remember that the trade union movement would have fought for the 8-hour work week. You must remember that the trade union is a fundamental part of your economy, meaning that without workers, you cannot produce. And the trade union and workers are symbolic, they have a symbolic relationship. And the reason for the trade union is to balance the economic powers, because if you leave workers individually to represent the might of business, the scales of justice will not be balanced. So then, what do I do as a worker? I produce anything that you see is the workers produce. And while the employer has a role, or the business class has a role, right? Let me give you an example, right? You could have a pizza house, but if you don't have workers to make the pizza, if you don't have workers to fix the machine, how are you going to sell the pizza? So that is the importance of the trade union and by extension workers within any economy. You cannot have an economy without workers and a trade union movement.
Mm-hmm. All right. With regards to the laws and the ILO convention of which you've raised, Am I correct that the unions have reported or are going to report the government to the ILO for failing to actually ratify Convention 87 of 1948?
No, it's not only the ratification. We are saying that the government would have failed under the Convention 98 to negotiate in good faith and in reasonableness, because that act gives the government as an employer, and I think we have to make that particular point for the listening public here. The government in this instance is the employer, the biggest employer. And under the Industrial Relation Act 1 and under the ILO conventions that you refer to, there's a right to organize one and there's a right to collective bargaining. And it's only when you recognize workers could you do collective bargaining for and on behalf of those groups of workers according to our law. And we are saying that the government would have failed, one, to negotiate in good faith. The government have outstanding negotiations for several groups of workers. We have witnessed in our humble view from the essential industry, and I make no apologies for it, the approach of those of the chairperson and the other members who sat in the quorum, where they actually forced by the utterances the prison association organization to go and sign the 4%. We believe that is not good industrial relation practices. We believe that no court should use their powers unreasonably and unfairly to instill fear into members so that they could accept a 4% wage offer, which the labor movement would have disagreed with. So that when we talk about that convention, that is what we are going to the ILO for. We are going to speak to the fact that since 2007, the academic staff at Cipriani Labor College have not had an increase by this government. We are going and speak to the ILO that there was an agreement for 2014 to 2017 that was signed off on acquiesced to by the port management, their consultant, and the union for a 12% wage increase for the period 2014 to 2017. And the government have not yet given the instructions to the Port Authority to implement those agreements, and we are now in 2023. We are going to talk about the workers at PTSC, the MTS workers, the Institute of Marine Affairs, HGC, WASA, and I could go on and on. Who boards have not gotten any instructions from the Interministerial Committee of the government to start negotiation
Mr. Annisette, my
workers.
apologies for having to cut you, but it's unfortunate we don't have more time to continue this discussion because there's a lot more that I'd like to get into. So we will have to work on getting you on for more time.
I will appreciate it. I will appreciate it so that the general public will get a better appreciation of what are the issues, and those issues is a societal issues, and it has social implications and fallout based on government. What we will want to say, concerted failure to meet and treat in good faith with the trade union movement.
All right, Mr. Annisette, well, thank you very much for your time this morning.
The pleasure is always mine.